Michael is an R&D project manager at Evergen. He has over 5 years of experience as a professional engineer in the medical device field, working at a Fortune 500 company, um, at multiple Fortune 500 companies, including Baxter and Medtronic. He is a member of the PMI Chicagoland chapter. He volunteers on the chapter's executive outreach committee and holds PMP and ACP certifications. He has a he has a BS in mechanical engineering and a BA in international relations, and he brings a methodological approach to project management developed through practical experience working on various projects, including new product development, sustaining product teams, and regulatory projects. Thank you, Michael, for joining us tonight, and thank you for making me say the word methodological. No, I don't know. With that, I will hand it over to you. And like I mentioned, if you have any issues, I'm just right behind a turned off video. And thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Ashley. Let me make sure I can share my screen okay. Are you able to see the PowerPoint slide now?
It's not in presenter. There we go. Yes.
Okay. And the little icon is out of the way, right? Like there's no other video image covering the slide?
Nope. Not on my
Okay,
view. Nope.
excellent. Then I will begin. Thanks again, Ashley, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining tonight. I have prepared two presentations, and the first one is an introduction to project management, followed by AI for PMs. A little bit about myself again. I have a background in international relations and mechanical engineering, and just 6 years of experience in the medical device field. I joined PMI at the end of 2024 and have earned my PMP, ACP, and RMP certificates. So those are the Project Management Professional, Agile Certified Practitioner, and Risk Management Professional. And recently I was nominated into the volunteer role of Director of Programs for the Chicagoland PMI chapter. So PMI is the Project Management Institute. They are the leading global nonprofit organization for project, program, and portfolio management. We offer different certificates, including the PMP, the ACP, and the CPMAI, which recently came out last year, covering the Certified Professional Managing AI, and the CAPM, which is the Certified Associate Project Manager. So I'll begin my presentation with the question, what is project management? The PMBOK Guide, which is PMI's flagship book, project management book of knowledge or body of knowledge, defines project management as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements, focusing on initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing a project to achieve specific goals, acting as a framework of processes, best practices, and standards overseen by the PMI. So one way to define projects is to compare it to operations. And the difference is that projects have a set start and end date and tend to be change focused, whereas operations are the continuous or repetitive part of the business workflow. Projects also have at least the three different elements of cost, time, and scope, together making the golden project triangle, as you can see on the right. And quality is built into all aspects of the project as well. So another article, if you're interested in further looking into the differences between projects and operations, another article came out in the Harvard Business Review titled The Project-Driven Organization, and it articulated the evolution of business going from a operations-driven enterprise at the turn of the 20th century to being impacted by the evolution of Agile methodology at the turn of the 21st century. And more recently, we're seeing a lot of projects or businesses take on a project-oriented mindset with their enterprise-wide transformation projects. So the rest of my presentation, I have built out the agenda around an introduction to project methodologies, including Waterfall, hybrid, and Agile projects, different roles of the project manager, including the PM, the product manager, the product design owner, scrum master. I'll introduce some project management tools, including a work breakdown structure, Gantt chart, Kanban boards, priority backlog, and burn down charts. I'll cover stakeholder engagement and how project managers are also people managers. I'll discuss conflict resolution management strategies and the Tuckman's team building model. Then I'll cover requirement prioritization with different types of prompts to drive requirement building, including the mouse scout prompt, feature-driven design, behavior-driven design, and the invest prompt. Then I'll end this presentation with some additional resources available on YouTube or with the Chicagoland PMI chapter, along with a list of other Agile frameworks. So to start off the presentation, I'll dive into the two main types of project methodologies. On one side, you have traditional waterfall projects, and on the other side, you have agile or adaptive projects. So traditional projects tend to take a more linear sequential approach. When one task is completed, that initiates the beginning of the next work activity. And most of their team members involve specialty-based roles, whereas Agile really focuses on an iterative or incremental development cycle and builds teams based on cross-functionality. So looking back at the Golden Project Triangle, we can kind of compare and contrast these two different project methodologies. The waterfall predictive approach basically is built around having the outcome known to the project team at the beginning. So the requirements of the project are going to be the constraints, whereas the cost and the schedule may fluctuate. As long as the output is delivered, the cost and the schedule may vary during the project's evolution. Whereas an agile project, the intention is to build out the highest valued or priorities for that project scope. And these are going to be the features. So you're going to kind of have some flexibility in terms of what features are going to be built out, while the cost and the schedule are kind of the driving constraints. For traditional projects, we have the project lifecycle as defined by these 5 stages. The first stage is the project initiation and then project planning, followed by project execution, project monitoring and controlling, and then project closure. For hybrid and agile projects, you may have more of a phase gate development approach, where the project will begin in the feasibility phase and move through requirements. And for an agile approach, it may go back and forth between design, development, and testing, ultimately going through deployment, and then going through a knowledge transfer where the project is shifted to the operations team. Agile is heavily related to lean methodology, which is a common practice in most manufacturing fields, as it's driven by Six Sigma. And it's overlapped with the Kanban approach as well. But Agile itself has several different frameworks within its methodology. And these kind of vary based on application, but also where the emphasis is within the Agile methodology itself. So some of these frameworks include Scrum, Crystal, Extreme Programming, which is a test-driven development approach for programmers, FDD or feature-driven development, amongst others. But they all kind of share this similar framework where the team will begin with a priority backlog of a list of priorities or valued features from highest priority to lowest. Then the team will go through an iteration planning meeting where they'll pull out the highest valued priorities and put them into the sprint backlog with the intention of working through those prioritized features during the iteration. And it's key to have the iteration timeframe relatively short because you want to be able to continuously show progress on the product development. The development team will meet daily through daily reviews. During the Scrum framework, these are called Scrums. And then at the end of the iteration, there's an iteration review with the broader team or other stakeholders where the development team kind of showcases the work that they've made progress on. At the end, the development team will go through an iteration retrospective to reflect on lessons learned, and then they go through the same cycle until they are able to produce their finished work. So I'll take a minute for any questions from anybody in the audience. Otherwise, I will continue on. So there are many different roles within project management. We have the project manager, and their responsibility is to ensure that project deliverables are produced on time, within budget, and according to scope. Their main priority is to remove impediments or blockers from negatively impacting the team, mainly external conflicts that would distract day-to-day work of the team, and they are also responsible to communicate on the project's progress with the sponsor. The product design owner is responsible for the priority backlog, and they are expected to understand the customer and the user's needs to be able to ensure that the delivery of features meet the customer's top needs or priorities. The Scrum Master is a unique role for the Scrum framework, and their priority is to coach the team on Scrum Agile best practices, focusing on improving the process of team development. And they also will facilitate the Scrum events, such as the planning, the daily Scrums, the reviews, and the retrospectives. They foster continuous improvement and help the product owner with backlog maintenance. The predictive or traditional project tools may include the work breakdown structure and the Gantt chart. So the work breakdown structure is a template to track work packages or smaller work blocks that together produce the defined deliverable. The project phases should not overlap. The completion of one initiates the beginning of the next activity. And Gantt charts list these tasks alongside the schedule so that you can easily track completion of milestones and easily compare between expected and actual targets. So here's an example of the concept of a work breakdown structure. You have your project at the top level built out of many different deliverables, and these deliverables are built from different work packages. So these might be the different tasks that different stakeholders contribute into delivering the deliverable. Here's an example of a Gantt chart. So the long dark blue bar represents the deliverable, whereas the turquoise rectangle kind of represents the duration of a task. And then the diamond represents the completion of the milestone. So there might be several activities that contribute into the deliverable. And then the completion of that deliverable is represented by the diamond at the end. And the completion of one milestone initiates the beginning of the work for the next. So within PMI, I participated in their mentorship program, and they had a PDP template or professional development plan. And similar to the work breakdown structure, they have a list of objectives broken out into different activities. And then these activities were mapped out alongside the schedule. So as you can see, the completion of one activity initiated the work of the next activity in the best practice situation. So some project tools for Agile projects include the Kanban board, the priority backlog, and the burn down charts. The Kanban board is a visual radiator to display the work in progress, and it is a helpful tool to identify different bottlenecks. The priority backlog is a tracker of requirements to ensure that the top priorities are at the top of the list that the development team is going to work on. They may be value based on value to the customer or adjusted for risk. They may include compliance, quality, regulatory requirements as well. And the burn down chart is a visual chart displaying the amount of work completed relative to the amount of work to do. And this shows the project velocity as well. So here's an example of a Kanban board. You have one column that tracks your activities to do, another column for your activities in progress, and your final column for your done activities. So with the Kanban board, you can identify bottlenecks by tracking how long certain activities are in progress. It's important to maintain a cadence around a predetermined WIP or work in progress number. And these are going to be the amount of activities that would be in the in progress column. So if you see certain activities in the in progress column for too long of a period, then you may be triggered to investigate what's causing that activity to be stuck and not move forward. When an activity is moved from the in progress column to the done column, then you're able to pull another activity from the to do column into the in progress column so that you maintain that steady work in progress cadence. Product backlog flow. Here's an example of the concept of a product backlog. So you have your highest prioritized requirements at the top of the list, and each new requirement added into the stack is prioritized accordingly, and they may be reprioritized by the product design owner at any time, and they may be removed at any time if it's determined that they don't contribute value to the customer's needs. One additional note on that, if you do pull certain requirements for a sprint backlog, you want to make sure that you acknowledge that you remove that requirement from the sprint backlog, because you want to show transparency. If you are considering to do the work involved in one of those requirements for the sprint, you want to be transparent to the rest of the team and the other stakeholders that that requirement was not completed. But for the product backlog or the priority backlog, you can add priorities to the list as long as they contribute value to the intended end user. So with that, each iteration implements the highest priority requirements. Each new requirement is prioritized and added to the stack. Requirements may be reprioritized at any time, and they may be removed at any time. So a burn down chart is another Agile tool that shows the progress of the team. So in this example, the team has evaluated that the work of the activities of the project equates to 80 user story points. And these are basically a representation of how much effort the team is going to need to put into the project. Sorry. And so the intention is to finish the project in 5 weeks' time with 80 points that sets the velocity to be 16 points per week. And in this example, we see that the team has completed 30 user story points in the first week. So now they only have 50 left to do. So they are ahead of schedule since they are below this pink line that represents the ideal cadence of 16 points per week. However, by the second week, they lose momentum and they've only completed 10 more user story points worth of work, and they have 40 points left to do. At this point, maybe the PDO has added additional work to the project and has increased the number of user story points to 55. The team only completed 10 user story points, and so now they have 45 user story points left to go, and they have fallen behind the ideal cadence. So the project has fallen behind track. They continue to do 10 user story points worth of work. By the end of week 4, they have 35 user story points left of work to do. But they pull it together and they finish all their work by the end of week 5 on time. So with that, as an example of different Agile project tools, there's other Agile concepts that are useful to know, including the T-shaped team member. These are team members that have deep discipline expertise in their respective function, but also have cross-discipline expertise and know how to work with other functional leads within the team. User story points is the concept of effort points that I explained earlier with the burn down chart. The product owner or product manager evaluates the priority of the features to be worked on before each sprint based on customer value and potentially adjusted for risk if you want to include compliance, quality, or regulatory requirements in the list as well. Development team assigns the number of user story points for these features, and the velocity is the user story points per interval. Once the user story points are decided for a sprint, though, they should not be taken out of the sprint backlog. Only if the product owner decides priorities are no longer needed can they truly be removed from the sprint. But at the end of the sprint, when you do the iteration review, you want to be transparent to other stakeholders that that feature was either removed because it was determined to not be valuable to the customer or because the project team wasn't able to complete it for whatever reason. Maybe they deprioritized it or didn't allocate the right amount of work effort to that user story. Another agile concept is rolling wave planning. This is when you build out details for the requirements that are most current or recent. So you will build out the requirements as they are going to be worked on in more detail and leave some of the details out for some of the later or lower prioritized features. So any questions on either the traditional or agile tools or concepts?
Did you see, there was a question. It says, what's the difference between PMI, PMP, and other management certifications? Is there anyone that you would recommend for beginners or to just go with job requirements?
Yeah, I guess. So the PMP is a certificate that requires 3 years of project experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that you had to have been working in a project manager role, just that you worked on complex projects that you can describe in your application. But if you don't have professional experience or haven't worked with projects in some way, you can apply for the CAPM. That's the Certified Associate Project Manager certificate. And that's kind of the entry certificate if you're interested in kind of just getting into the project management field. And then the other certificates that I mentioned, including the Agile Certified Practitioner and the Risk Management Professional, those are considered specialty certificates. So they do have different requirements, all of which are listed on PMI's website. If you go to their certificate page, you can select whichever certificate you're interested in, and it will outline what the requirements are and who the ideal candidate is for each one. All right, so further ado, for stakeholder engagement, project managers are also people managers. They have to focus on the technicals, but also the human element of projects. They have to work through conflict management and resolve disagreements and foster collaboration to move the project forward. And I'll also cover Tuckman's model for team building and understanding the stages of team development. So with projects, there's going to be different levels of interests and influence, and this is going to create some conflict as different stakeholders have their own set of priorities and interest in the project. The project manager, though, is responsible for the project, so they need to kind of help resolve these conflicts so that they themselves don't become the roadblock for the project's success. Different conflict management styles vary based on the levels of assertiveness or cooperativeness that the project manager needs to take. In some situations, for the betterment of the project, neither stakeholder might get what they want, and this would be a lose-lose situation or avoiding the ask from the stakeholders. Perhaps you're in a situation where the stakeholder has greater influence than another stakeholder. So the project manager has to facilitate the dispute so that the more influential stakeholder is going to win in a disagreement. but then that's going to have the other stakeholder lose. So that's competing interests. And the inverse of that is accommodating. And then ultimately, if you have a win-win situation that would work best for both stakeholders, that might be collaborating or even compromising, where you're finding the middle ground that works for everybody. So Tuckman's model for team building takes shape after the team is formed. It's expected that the team is going to go through some sort of storming phase where they have disagreements and are kind of figuring out how they're going to work together. Once they pass through this stage, there's the norming phase, performing. So hopefully they reach a point of optimal performance, and then the team is going to adjourn at the end of the project. For requirements, there's a lot of different ways to build out requirements, a lot of different prompts, but the Moscow model might be the most useful, as we want to evaluate the criticality of different features for our project. So our must-have features are going to be those critical features that are kind of driving the need of the project. Then we have should-have features or requirements, and these are important, but maybe don't make or break the product. And then we have nice to have features, otherwise known as could have. And then we might also want to compile a list of those requirements that are out of scope or things we know that we won't have, maybe to make sure that our team is aware, or because we want to include those features in later versions. So once you have your must have, should have, could have, and won't have requirements, you can go back and assign an estimated amount of work effort or user story points to kind of determine how much work is going to be required for achieving different levels of complexity or criticality for your project. So if you want to make sure that you are able to have just the bare minimum requirements for your project, then you might just focus on the work needed to achieve the must-have requirements. If you want to include some of those nice to have, should have, could have requirements, then you will look at the work allocated for achieving those requirements as well. Another approach to building out requirements is the invest prompt. So it's really important when you're building out requirements is that they're built in a way that all stakeholders can interpret them, so that the outcome is more or less understood and the same across all different functionalities. And the invest model takes that into consideration. And it represents or stands for independent. Can the user story be delivered and tested separately? Is it negotiable? Is it not a fixed contract and open to discussion? Valuable? Does it deliver clear value to the user or stakeholder? Is it estimable? Can the team roughly size or approximate how much effort is going to go into building out the user story? Is it small? Can it be completed within a sprint? And is it testable? Has it been built with a clear acceptance criteria? So when you build out requirements, you may be building out certain tasks. Another approach could be to build out specific features. So when you're building out features, you might break them down into testable, implementable chunks. And an example of a feature could be an app that you're building that you want to have different representation or numbers displayed, including calculating the monthly spending on the dashboard. So this is representing the action, the result, and the object of the feature that you want your product to ultimately be able to deliver. Whereas another approach for requirement building is the behavior-driven development. This is when you are working on a project and you want the outcome to produce a specific type of behavior in a certain environment. So this is following the format given, when, then. Otherwise, you can write it as the template as shown on the screen. As a type of user, I want some goal or action so that some benefit or value is to be achieved. So in the healthcare field or medical devices, you might build a device where you want a clinician alert to have a set of parameters. And you might write requirement as a clinician. I want to be alerted when a patient's vitals fall outside of a safe range so that I can intervene quickly to prevent harm. You might even go one step further and include what that safe range is and how quickly you want to be able to intervene. The more specific you can be, the better the team is going to have an understanding to build out that requirement, because they'll be able to clearly identify what the acceptance criteria is. So with that, I conclude my first presentation. If you are interested in learning more about project management, I recommend checking out the YouTube channel of David McLaughlin and Andrew Ramdalyal. There's also PMI resources available. If you're interested in studying for a certificate, they have an extra service for a fee called Study Hall that provides you with flashcards and practice material to help you prepare for the exam. And you know that it's coming from a credible source since it's coming from the test maker itself, PMI. PMI Chicagoland has their chapter meetings on the second Wednesday of the month. They don't have one in July or August, so the next chapter meeting is in September. But PMI also has a series of online webinars available on their website as well. If you're interested in learning more about Agile, here's a list of several different frameworks that fall under the Agile umbrella, including Scrum, SAFe, Extreme Programming, Kanban, Feature-Driven Development, Crystal. Just to highlight what these are, SAFe is for program or portfolio management with Agile methodology principles involved. So it entails Agile release trains. Extreme programming is around test-driven development, similar to feature-driven development or behavior-driven development. You're going to build out your requirements to achieve a certain test. And Crystal framework emphasizes on identifying the different criticality level of different requirements. So that is the end of my first presentation. Are there any questions?
I don't see any in the chat.
Okay, excellent. And I will begin my next presentation, but first I want to give a shout out about a event that PMI Chicagoland has coming up on October 9th at the College of DuPage, or the College of Dreams, as some refer it. Our theme this year is Adapt, Innovate, Amplify. And if you want to sign up or find out more information, go ahead and scan the QR code in the left corner. Our keynote speakers are Ray, a former Bears player, Aaron Ramirez, an adaptability strategist. And then we have, I think, 6 or 7 different breakout sessions. So we have an AI workshop by Xavier. Ricardo is talking about culture. Luke is talking about generational gaps in the workplace, and there's many more. Until the end of the summer, there's currently a discount of $100 on tickets for members and non-members. So if you're interested, go ahead and scan the QR code and check it out. But I will be moving into my next presentation on AI for project managers. So similar to my first presentation, I'll start off with a question. What is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science concerned with the development of systems and machines capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. These tasks can include learning, reasoning, problem solving, understanding language, visual perception. AI leverages techniques that, like machine learning, natural language processing, and robotics, to enable systems to mimic cognitive functions. So this answer was derived by an AI chatbot. PMI has a chatbot called Infinity, available for PMI members, and it's built off of their documents and certificates as well. But I just thought it was kind of interesting to receive an answer about what is artificial intelligence from an AI. Another AI chatbot that everyone is probably well aware about now is ChatGPT. And the National Bureau of Economic Research conducted a study analyzing over 1 million conversations on ChatGPT between May and June of 2024 to assess how people are using AI. So their findings showed that the top three categories were practical guidance, writing, and seeking information. So these use cases included editing, tutoring, obtaining how-to guidance, professional communication, summarization, research, fact-finding, and product comparisons. Other categories to a smaller usage included technical, multimedia, and self-expression use cases, including programming support, image generation, and interpersonal communication or informal use. So it shows that the use case of using AI really varies with people using it sort of like a Google for seeking out information to helping them with their professional communication and a lot of other use cases in between. But it's easy to say that tech companies are spending big on AI. At the end of last year, for their fourth quarter earnings report, Meta shared that they were expecting to spend up to $135 billion in 2026. This is almost double the $72 billion that they spent last year in 2025. Earlier this year, we also saw heavy investments in OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, by NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and a Japanese investment company, SoftBank, totaling over $100 billion in investment. Last year, we also saw a lot of speculation about the AI infrastructure and all of this investment as people or investors were speculating if there was an AI bubble. For example, OpenAI purchased $300 billion in cloud services from Oracle. Oracle had also purchased $40 billion worth of AI chips from NVIDIA, and NVIDIA invested $100 billion into OpenAI. So we started to see this sort of circular investment framework that kind of raised a lot of eyebrows in the investment community about a year ago. But kind of bringing things back to ground level, if you want to better understand AI, it's important to understand the basics, including understanding what prompts, bias, and human-centric are referring to. So prompts are instructions given to an AI system that define the task, context, and constraints for its response. Prompt quality matters because when prompts are clear, specific, and well-structured, prompts produce more accurate, relevant, and reliable AI outputs. Bias is referring to how human perceived relations or assumptions influence the cause and effect relation of data input and output. What data sources are included in training the data of the AI system will heavily influence the output of the AI model. As you may have heard, garbage in is going to produce garbage out, or bad input is going to lead to bad output. The human-centric model consists of the human in the loop, and this is when humans are actively involved in reviewing, validating, or intervening in AI outputs, especially in high-risk or regulated decisions to maintain control and oversight. Hallucinations happen when AI generates information that is incorrect, misleading, or fabricated, often presenting confidently despite lacking factual grounding. So this is one of the reasons that we want to make sure that there's a human in the loop. So the human-centric model is going to have an overlap of when AI is going to be involved and when the human is going to be involved. At the ground level of the DIKUW pyramid is data. And these are the basic facts that are fed into the AI system. After the AI system reviews the data, it is going to collect information and produce knowledge. This knowledge is going to be what the human is going to review to build understanding and ultimately wisdom in their respective activity. So another visual representation of the pyramid is showing how data is raw, unprocessed facts that is going to be categorized with context by the AI and produce information. These information bubbles will be linked together to produce knowledge that will be reviewed by a human user to produce wisdom and ultimately produce insight and prioritize action in their respective activity. So it's showing the relation between an AI system and the human user. And with AI, it seems like every day there's a new AI tool that's coming out or a new AI version of different tools that are being released. And this is a relatively short list, but there's several different domains that you can find different AI productivity tools to assist you with, from image generation to writing generation to presentations, scheduling, and coding assistance to video generation, workflow automation, etc. Some of the ones that we all might have heard before include ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude, DeepSeek, which is a Chinese AI model, Google Gemini, and Adobe Firefly, DALL-E, Midjourney. So there's several different AI tools that you can use, and this list is available for you to kind of explore what your other options are. But with so many tools available, it's hard to really like focus where you want to put your efforts as a business. And you may fall for the trap of just running for the next shiniest, brightest thing and building out different proofs of concepts without really seeing any value generated. So instead of just building out proof of concepts, which tends to be focused around just becoming familiar with different tools, focus your business activities on completing a pilot or an MVP, a minimum viable product. So this is going to be a business activity where you see through with an end objective in mind to be able to actually determine if the AI tool has produced any useful value for your business, instead of just playing around with a bunch of different AI tools and saying that they aren't really applicable to your business model. Because until you actually run through a course of building out a pilot or an MVP, it's going to be much harder for you to make that assessment. And when you're building out an MVP, one of the project management frameworks or methodologies that you can use is Agile. You'll continue to build out your pilot through small, frequent iterations. And as you are reviewing or assessing your AI pilot, you're going to review the return on investment and different ways to evaluate an ROI for an AI project include evaluating the financial savings, the resource savings, or the time savings. For the financial savings, this might relate to how much money a project will generate or save relative to the expenses. For resource savings, this is going to review if the operating costs or manual processes have been improved. And for time savings, you might review if it's reducing time and saving your team from performing work on repetitive tasks. Other areas of ROI or impact of the AI project that you might want to consider evaluating include environmental impact, community impact, and macroeconomic impact as well. If you're investing in an AI project, you may be pulling investment from other activity. Ultimately, though, I think the consensus is that AI will not replace project managers, but enhance the performance of those who use it. Something that I heard from a PMI discussion group a few months ago was from an audience member suggesting that the jobs of yesterday were assigned based on what people knew, but the jobs of tomorrow will be based on how people ask questions using AI. So one way to use AI to ask questions is prompt engineering. There's a lot of different structures out there to improve how you are asking AI and building your prompts. One that I recommend is taking on a role, specifying the objective, giving instruction as to the user request, providing a process, output format, and stop condition. So the role is going to be the type of persona you want the chatbot to take on to answer your prompt. The objective is a specific and measurable goal, and the user request is a specific input or instruction. The process is your structured workflow, and the output format is your desired result of the deliverable, how you want the information to be presented to you. And the stop condition is optional, but it's an explicit criteria to terminate the prompt. So, for example, I am interested in planning a trip to Ecuador. So I'm going to be asking ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, whichever chatbot is your preference, to assume the role as a semi-experienced hiker having climbed to at least 2 significant summits, provide a checklist to climb Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador. The objective is to recommend at least 2 activities that should be done to prepare for acclimation before climbing, 3 tour groups or guides, and a checklist of the top 10 important gear or equipment to have for this hike. The user request is to provide a clear itinerary with ideal locations as applicable to go on this hike. Include any details that need to be considered for overnight, such as lodging before the hike at the base or campsite. For a process, I'm asking the chatbot to review and provide a relative ranking of importance for each activity in the timeline. As the output, I'm asking it to produce this information in a detailed sequential table, so the first activities are at the top. Assign a general topic of each activity, such as pre-hike, lodging, gear, meals, etc., listed in another column. Add activities or categories to provide distinction as you see fit, but it should include at least these 4 in the table. Include the relative importance of each activity in another column, and assign the number of sequence of each task in the first column. Provide no more than 2 sentences worth of information per activity, and if more is needed, then break it down into separate activities. As a stop condition, I'm asking it to stop after the timeline lists 20 activities. So with that, I have concluded my presentation on AI, and the next section, I'm going to introduce some of the framework proposed by PMI's new certificate, the CPMAI, which is the Certified Professional Managing AI. So are there any questions? Okay. Is there anything that you think I should go back to and revisit, Ashley?
Shout out to the College of Dreams.
Okay. I can go back to that at the end as well. So as I mentioned, PMI came out with a new certificate to introduce a project management framework for managing AI projects. And they've identified these 7 different types of patterns for AI. And this includes recognition, autonomous systems, conversation and human interaction, goal-driven systems, hyper-personalization, patterns and anomalies, and predictive analytics and directions. So per the CPMAI, it recommends that if you have a project that overlaps with more than one of these 7 patterns, you want to break down your project into different projects. For an AI project to be successful, it should only focus on one of these patterns. And the CPMAI kind of takes on this hyper agile approach to managing AI projects. So whereas the agile framework went through an iterative development process, the CPMAI framework for managing AI projects has 6 different phases, and you go back and forth between them in almost any order as you are continuously evaluating your project, and you revisit any of the phases that you need to address any gaps that you discover as you're continuously building out your project. But ultimately, you're going to begin the project with the first phase of business understanding. You're going to go through data understanding, data preparation, model development, model evaluation, and model operationalization. And I have data understanding and data preparation encircled by the big red circle here because the CPMAI framework emphasizes that for all AI projects, you really want to spend most of your time in these two phases because it's really critical for the AI model development, evaluation, and operationalization to be successful if your data is good. Because again, good input is going to drive good output. Bad input is going to produce bad output. So even though it's an AI project, you're going to spend the majority of your time and resources in the data understanding and data preparation phases. So the first phase of business understanding defines the problem the AI initiative is meant to solve and confirms that AI is an appropriate approach. It focuses on clarifying business objectives, shaping AI-specific requirements, identifying ethical and responsible use considerations, and setting measurable success criteria such as KPIs. This phase creates alignment on scope, value, and decision criteria before the team moves into the later technical work. So basically, you want to make sure that there is a need for the AI initiative. The team translates a business need into clear AI project goals and requirements, so the effort starts with a defined purpose rather than a vague use case. It evaluates whether AI should be pursued at all, including go, no-go considerations, feasibility, and responsible AI concerns. It establishes how success will be measured, including KPIs, expected outcomes, and stakeholder agreement on what the project must deliver. And as you can see highlighted in turquoise, with business understanding, the next phase is going to be data understanding. So the first two phases consist of understanding what the problem is. So phase two, data understanding, this is where you will focus on identifying, assessing, and framing the data the AI initiative will rely on. It examines what data is needed, where it will come from, whether it is sufficient in quality and quantity, and what constraints exist around access, privacy, and compliance. This phase helps the team confirm that the data environment can realistically support the business objective before preparation and modeling begins. The team identifies relevant data sources and determines whether the available data matches the problem the AI solution is intended to address. It evaluates data quality, quantity, completeness, and reliability, so risks and limitations are understood early. It addresses practical constraints such as access, infrastructure, privacy, compliance, and ownership to prepare for later AI work. And as mentioned before, with data understanding and data preparation, which is the next phase, that's where the bulk of the time will be spent for AI projects. So the data preparation phase is going to convert the raw data into a usable, AI-ready form for model development and deployment. It focuses on collecting, cleaning, transforming, and organizing data so it is accurate, complete, and structured appropriately for the intended AI approach. This phase is often one of the most time-intensive parts of an AI project because model quality depends heavily on how well the data has been prepared. So the team is going to gather and organize data from relevant sources and prepare it in suitable formats for analysis and model use. They will clean and refine the data by addressing issues such as errors, missing values, inconsistency, and the need for labeling or annotation. It also considers trustworthy AI concerns such as bias, privacy, and explainability, so the prepared data supports responsible model development. And the last three phases are going to impact the model itself. So the model development phase is where the team builds the AI solution using the prepared data and defined business objective. It will focus on selecting suitable techniques, training and tuning the models, and refining them so they are capable of addressing the intended use case. This phase turns planning and prepared data into a working model candidate for evaluation. The team will select the algorithms, methods, or model approaches that fit the problem, data, and business requirements. During this phase, the team will train and tune the model to improve performance and align results with the project success criteria. It may compare alternatives or combine approaches to produce a model that is ready for formal evaluation. So for the model evaluation phase, this is where the team will determine whether the developed model is fit for purpose and ready to move toward operational use. It focuses on validating and testing the model, checking its performance against success criteria, and identifying whether further refinement or retraining is needed. This phase helps ensure the solution is accurate, reliable, and aligned with business needs before deployment. The team validates and tests the model to confirm it performs appropriately on the intended tasks and measures results against defined success criteria such as accuracy, reliability, and business relevance. It may trigger retraining or refinement if the model does not yet meet the required performance level. And finally, we have model operationalization. This is when the team will focus on sustaining the AI solution after deployment so it continues to perform effectively over time. It includes monitoring the model in use, managing updates, handling drift or degradation, and maintenance, compliance, and support processes. This phase helps ensure the AI system remains reliable, relevant, and aligned with business and ethical expectations in ongoing operations. The team monitors model performance in the live environment to detect issues such as drift, instability, or decline. It manages maintenance activities such as retraining, version control, updates, and change management. And it sustains governance and oversight, including compliance, accountability, and responsible AI controls throughout use. So with that is the end of my presentation tonight. If you're interested to connect with me on LinkedIn, or email me at michaelspilg@gmail.com. You can scan the QR code in blue, or you can scan the QR code in red if you're interested for more information on PMI Chicagoland. And I can go back to the symposium slide too, if anybody wanted to.
Yeah, put that up. That looks good. I'm just sort of messing with you about COD, but yes, thank you everybody for attending. There were a few questions about whether or not this was going to be shared with attendees. And yes, if you registered, you will receive a link and any relevant links. You'll receive the link to the YouTube and any relevant links that Michael might have shared in his presentation, or anything that he sends me after the fact that he might want to share with you guys. So no pressure, but if I get anything from him, I will share it. Okay. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your time. That was wonderful.
excellent.
All right. Well, you have a great night. Okay.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night.